All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to tackle a huge question. Is economics really just about money? We're going to explore a revolutionary idea that completely changed the game.
When you hear the word economics, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably money, markets, maybe wealth. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if that's only half the story?
So, for the longest time, economics was pretty simple. It was the study of wealth. End of story. But then, this new idea came along and just flipped everything on its head. The big question became, what if economics isn't about money at all? What if it's really about people? And this traditional view, it had some heavy hitters behind it, like the famous Adam Smith. The definition was crystal clear. Economics is the science of wealth. And look, this idea dominated everything for more than 100 years. It was all about how to get more stuff, how to accumulate resources. And you can kind of see why, right? This was the Industrial Revolution. A country's strength was all about its gold reserves, its factories, its raw materials. It just made sense at the time.
But that way of thinking, that wealth first view, well, it was about to get a serious challenger. And that brings us to our main character today, a guy named Alfred Marshall. So who was this Alfred Marshall guy? Well, he was an English economist, and in 1890 he published this book, Principles of Economics, that became a total cornerstone of the field. He was really the first major voice to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, I think this whole science of wealth thing is completely missing the point. And if you want to boil down his entire philosophy into one sentence, it's this quote right here. He said, "Wealth is for man, and man is not for wealth." Just think about that for a second. He was arguing that all this stuff, all this money, it's not the actual goal. It's just a tool, a means to get to something much, much more important, human welfare.
And that one idea, that single shift in thinking, laid the foundation for a brand new definition of economics, one that put people, not money, right at the very center of it all. Okay, so here it is, Marshall's big new definition. He saw economics as the study of humans in, and I love this phrase, the ordinary business of life. It examines how we use material resources to, well, to improve our well-being. And just look at those key words, humans, ordinary business, and welfare. That is a world away from the old focus. Let's break that logic down, because it's actually pretty straightforward. It's really a four-step thing. 1, people are just living their normal lives. 2, they get some wealth, that's the tool, the means. 3, they use that wealth. And 4, by using it, they reach the actual goal, the end, which is human welfare. See? Simple, but powerful.
So you see, this wasn't just, tweaking a definition in a textbook. This was a complete, top-to-bottom rethink of what economics is even for. So let's dig into the key principles that made his idea such a game changer. Marshall's definition completely flipped the script on what was important. If you think of economics as a movie, the old version had wealth as the main character. But Marshall came in and said, nope, the main character is people. Wealth? Oh, it's still in the movie, for sure. But now it's just a supporting actor. Now, Marshall was a really practical guy. He wasn't talking about some fuzzy, abstract idea of happiness. He zeroed in on what he called material welfare. Basically, the tangible stuff we actually need to live a decent life. Food, shelter, the basics. And that's what made his version of economics both a social science and a really practical one. Okay, so if economics is all about people, does that mean it studies everybody? Good question. And Marshall? Well, he had a very specific answer. He was super specific about this. His economics studied ordinary people living together in society. He actually left out people on the fringes. Think of a miser who just hoards money or a saint who gives everything away. Their behavior just didn't fit the typical everyday pattern of earning and spending that he was interested in. In that phrase again, the ordinary business of life, it is so important. Marshall wasn't trying to create some complicated abstract theory that only a few people could understand. He was interested in the stuff that defines most of our lives, how we earn a living and how we spend our money. And suddenly, economics became something that everybody could actually relate to. But here's the thing, as totally groundbreaking as Marshall's idea was, it wasn't the final word, not even close. It was a huge step, for sure, but it was just one step in this long, ongoing story about what economics is supposed to be all about.
It's actually fascinating when you look at how economic thought has evolved. You start in 1776 with Adam Smith, and it's all about the science of wealth. Then, boom, 1890, Marshall comes along and shifts it to human welfare. But the conversation keeps going. By 1932, another guy, Lionel Robbins, comes in and says, "You're both missing the real point." He argued the central problem is scarcity, the fact that we don't have enough of everything. So for him, economics became the science of choice. It just goes to show you, each generation kind of builds on and sometimes tears down the ideas that came before. So when you look back, what's Marshall's lasting impact? Simple. He is the guy who put the human back into economics. He's the one who took the spotlight off of abstract wealth and shined it on real-world human welfare. He made economics a science that was both practical and deeply social. And that brings us right back to today and leaves us with a really big question to chew on. This whole debate that Marshall kicked off, it is more relevant now than it has ever been. I mean, we see it every day in conversations about how we measure a country's success. Should we just look at its GDP, which is purely about economic output? Or should we be looking at things like a gross national happiness index? What should the real goal of economics be? Just creating more wealth or promoting human welfare? It's a huge question, and it's one we are absolutely still trying to figure out.